Oops. Audio wasn't on. Okay. Hopefully it's good now. Hello to you all. Grand rising, grand afternoon, grand evening, whenever you're seeing this. I am in a study room right now. Getting ready for my exam tomorrow for sociology. It is backwards, I just realized that, but this is my textbook. Well, one of them. There's two textbooks. This one cannot leave the library. So I have it for the next 4 hours. And I need to read 3 chapters. So, well, 3.5 chapters technically. But I'm taking a nice break to have some delicious honeydew melon with some plant-based agave syrup. This is a Purity Award certified organic amber agave syrup. And I'm just gonna drizzle, as you can barely see it on the video, the serving size, which is 1 tablespoon. So delicious, very hydrating, very electrolyte and vitamin C boosting, right? Great for your immune system, great for if you're in changing weather environments. Some nice melon and agave or honey, from sustainably sourced places are best. Instead of, going to a pharmacy or trying to, overanalyze what thing you could buy at the store to help you get over a cold or a cough or a sore throat or whatever over the weekend, And I was doing a little bit of studying before the library, of course. I get a few bites in. Chunky one. So good. So good, oh my gosh. And you could have this before a workout, before a bike ride, a hike, things of that nature, because melons are mostly water. Cantaloupe, this is honeydew, of course, watermelon, grapes, cucumbers, they are great as snacks or like things to help fuel you throughout the day because they're mostly water and antioxidant rich because of the different electrolytes and vitamins in them. So of course I recommend melon any time of the day, and if you have a particular craving to sweets or you like having sweet treats or chocolate all the time, I recommend going to natural sugars like dates or melons instead of going for like ice cream or candy bars or again those processed sugary foods, so that your body can get used to natural sugar, natural processing, natural functioning, instead of being bombarded with all these chemicals and additives and sugars and bioengineered foods or foods that have just dyes in them that we're not aware of, or chemicals like texturizing agents or solvents or things that when you look at the label and you read it, it's just like, I don't know what that is. And it's best to have more holistic, more alkaline, more grounding, fueling foods, so that later on in your life, when you get to your late 20s, your early 30s, your early 40s, things like that, you won't have to worry about autoimmune, conditions. You won't have to worry about constantly getting sick or constantly having really bad allergies or things like having constant migraines, fatigue, all those things, right? 444 as I just looked at the timer. So I recommend everyone fuel yourself with the proper things for your body, right? Don't wait until your body has to tell you to stop eating those foods or stop taking those substances or stop smoking, do it beforehand so that your body has enough time to take care of the problem or treat the symptoms or get rid of the disease altogether, right? And the more consistent you are with eating healthier foods, the less you have to supplement things like vitamins or minerals or electrolytes. Your food should naturally be your medicine. Your food should naturally be your fuel. Your food should be the thing that you intake that gets you through the day. Not taking a stimulant first thing in the day to be able to eat something or be able to focus or be able to digest something that you took earlier, right? So that is my little rant on food and holistic health. Delicious. Just passed 555 on the marker, so a little crunchy piece there. So I'm going to transition it now to just speaking about life in general after you become disciplined in the holistic health and in the exercise and the mental boundaries with yourself and the training that you need to do to become a successful person that self-regulates naturally. Now, that was a lot that I just said, right? In that 30-second span. But what does that mean, right? When you have the foundation or the first layer of healthy food and the proper supplementation of vitamins, electrolytes, minerals, all the things that we need to fuel ourselves, not just carbs and proteins and fats, not all of that stuff, right? The foundation being energy, water-based hydrating foods, things that fuel you with enough protein and enough fiber to process the food to use as fuel for the day, right? For your immune system, or for your cognitive development, or your communication, the way that you verbally function, the way that you socially function, right? When you have that basis, you are able to become more comfortable in your body, you are less anxious, you are more determined, and your focus shifts from issues to day-to-day discipline type of responsibilities. So instead of having to constantly worry about your health, constantly worry about spiraling mentally, constantly worrying about hygiene all the time, you are now able to move from that foundation of trusting yourself, listening to your body, listening to your instincts, your intuition, right? That's the foundation. Above that is where you tune your frequency, and meaning you're able to become more disciplined, more practiced, more skilled, more focused. Therefore, you're able to advance quicker because you have that foundation of trust and security with yourself, and you're constantly fueling yourself and you're taking care of your hygiene. Your body trusts you. After that level, it trusts you to make these choices. You're not constantly second guessing yourself. You're not constantly having a mental crisis. You're not constantly feeling led by your feelings, because your feelings are attached to the input and the intake throughout your day. So you're less emotionally reactive, you trust yourself more, and you're more focused to become a skilled person, to become a more social, active person in whatever, life role you take on, right? Whatever you want to do in life, this applies to everyone, right? So after you have that foundation of trust and that consistency of working out, the consistency of staying hydrated throughout the day, the consistency of doing research on things that are important or help you, again, function socially, cognitively, emotionally, spiritually, however you want to focus on your research, but as long as it helps you function better and communicate better with others, there's no issue with it. None. Do whatever research you want to do. Excuse me, confirmation. And after that, right, you become a more instinctive person, right? You listen to your instincts immediately, right? You become someone who tunes your frequency and uses your intuition more often, so you make less mistakes, you show up more presentable, right? You're maintaining your hygiene levels, your fluid levels, your fuel that you intake, right? You're maintaining it consistently so your body functions properly. It gets rid of the toxins, it gets rid of the disease if it ever forms in the first place, right? It gets rid of the emotional stress. It gets rid of inflammation, right? Your body does these things naturally. You don't need a medication, you don't need a label, you don't need a prescription, you don't need a whole identity based off of something that you could change through diet, exercise, and mental restraint, right? And what does mental restraint mean? Mental restraint is having those boundaries with yourself mentally. So you're not going to go into anxious thinking. You're not going to listen to intrusive thoughts. You're not going to follow whatever other people want you to do in life from, their projections onto you, right? You're not going to go into fight or flight mode at the drop of a hat. You're not going to go from 0 to 100, right? You're going to stay in that median, mid-range level of neutrality. And if something happens throughout the day that gives you an emotional trigger or a charge emotionally, then you're going to be able to have that mental boundary with yourself and take a step back and analyze what happened and look at things from an observation view instead of an absorbing the situation view, right? One of those gives you more clarity, more focus, while the other one has you overthinking, not focusing on your own needs, and you don't trust yourself over time. So having those mental boundaries, that fortitude, right, that emotional intelligence, and utilizing mindfulness, having awareness of your actions, of your responses, of the way that you live life in relation to others, gives you that third level of having that mind, body, and soul balance, right? So even if you have one day where you don't go to the gym, you don't do your exercises, or one day where you don't take a shower, or one day where you just feel like crap, you don't want to do your chores, you don't want to do your hygiene, you take the entire day and you rest, right? You let your body recharge, you sit in bed and you rest. Or you just sit and journal for an hour or two, But you're able to bounce back from those things once you get to that third level. You have your foundation, you have your skills, you have your consistency, you have your instinct-driven actions that lead to the results that are healthy and get you further in life, and you get to that third level of observing yourself easier, right? It's easier to solve conflict. It's easier to confront a situation. It's easier to communicate with people, even if those are uncomfortable conversations, right? Granted, not everything in life is going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy, as they say, or a walk in the park, right? There are some things where you have to use your instincts and your gut to make a hard choice. There are times in your life where you do have to focus on something for a lot of the time, that we're allotted throughout the day. There are some times where you have to shift your focus for a day, a few days, a week, a month, whatever it is, right? But your salience or your focus and attention that you're putting into something, your salience, right? You want to make sure that no matter what is the priority for the day, you're still checking in with yourself. You're still being mindful and aware of how you show up in the world, how you show up in your relationships, how you show up in your business that you work for or that you start yourself, whatever you're doing in life, right? How do you show up in your family? How do you show up in your community? And how do you show up for yourself? Simple, right? And after you get to this third level of awareness, of being consistent, and also bouncing back from those anxious thoughts, those depressive feelings, those angry conflicts, right? Those emotionally triggering and stirring things, you're able to reach that fourth level. After all of those, that I just talked about, you're able to reach that fourth level of integration, right? You could have learned from a few mistakes from your past. After reaching that third level, understanding how it impacted yourself, your self-worth, your identity, your ability to trust yourself, however the choice, that you chose to act upon changed or shifted your life, right? You can still move forward from that mistake. You can still move forward from that bad choice. You can still move forward from whatever blunder or issues from having a lack of clarity, or just unknowing, ignorance, one can say. But however you move on from ignorance and your past and those mistakes, right, you can now integrate a healthier decision. You can now say, I learned from my past. Here's how I learned. Here's what happened from that mistake and how I'm going to choose something differently moving forward, right? Not everyone is perfect. I know there's a lot of black and white thinking, especially from people who live in this country that I live in, but who are raised in more religious backgrounds. They tend to see things in black and white thinking. And this is the same case as well if you are someone who has gone with the medical route, the psychiatric route of labeling. There's a thing called labeling theory that I've studied in my introduction to sociology class, as I'm just speaking on having a study break, right? But labeling theory is a theory because we have found in research, I'm not even talking new research, this has been a thing since the 1900s, where we have found that in the psychiatric field, let's just say, they like to label people based off of the information that the people tell them from their childhood or from their most recent acts of violence, acts of aggression, or acts of self-harm, right? And instead of just labeling people and assessing the situation for how they, show up today, maybe we should look at things other than labels, because labels give us a black and white approach or thinking to ourselves and how we view ourselves. Because if we're told, hey, you have clinical depression, so you're going to be going through these phases seasonally or for a large part of your year, and you're just depressed, and that's all we can do clinically is put you on a prescription, schedule a psychiatrist or a counselor, counseling sessions for you, and just follow up with you. That's all we can do. That's all the help that the medical and psychiatric field can do. But imagine a different method, a different mode, a model, if you will, of treatment, of helping people become their authentic self again, their real self. Not the black and white labeling, not the emotional reactions to things, not the times of our life where we were so absorbed with the reaction or response or situation or trauma that it shifted our entire identity. It warped our sense of self. It shattered our trust within community, right? Those are natural things that happen throughout life. But again, imagine if we had a different model of healing, a different model of rehabilitation, a different model of helping people. Imagine if we looked at things from only a holistic perspective. Imagine a society that does not allow sickness to thrive. A society that does not allow labels or their past to define them. Imagine a society that treats the issue from the root up. Instead of looking at the petals falling off the flower, instead of looking at the dried up stem, instead of looking at the lack of absorption of sunlight. Imagine if we looked at the flower from its roots and looked at the soil that is around the root, looked at the environment and the conditions of the environment that the flower has to grow in. Imagine if we were able to repot and replace the plant in a different environment with different food, different factors. But it got everything that it needed. That plant, that flower would surely bloom again, right? It's natural, it's science, it's biological, right? That when you treat the issue, or when you're looking at where an organism, a living organism is dying, you have to look at everything comprehensively. The same thing must be true with holistic health. The same exact thing must happen for us to fully be able to bloom and flourish in the environment that we're in, right? We don't want to just wither. We don't want to dry up. We want to bloom. We want to soak in the sunlight. We want to feel the breeze and the rain and the everything as it naturally happens to us. Because we cannot control the weather, just like we cannot control the elements as a plant, as a flower. The same is true with us as human beings. We cannot control the environment that we're born into. We cannot control the people's responses to us as we grow up, as we develop. And we cannot control certain biological factors that we need, right? We can't just turn off our body. We can't just turn off our thoughts. We can't just turn off living, because we are living organisms. We go through change constantly over time. We evolve constantly over time. So labeling and looking at the past and trying to just prescribe from symptoms or uncomfortable feelings does not help us bloom, does not help us grow, does not help us accept in the light that we need. Right? This is simple understandings that we have to get to as a society as a whole, but most importantly as a human collective. We need to go back to being who we authentically are, who we biologically are, living, breathing, changing organisms, along with everything else in the web of life. This is true. Absolutely, this is true. Think about that for a second. And finally, after integration, that fourth stage that we're on, right? You are able to shift your identity, to shift into higher awareness of yourself, of your family, of your community, right? You're able to integrate from those mistakes into empowered actions. You're able to integrate that anxious thinking into more gratitude-based thinking, right? You're able to move forward in life with confidence because your past no longer defines you. You've changed the action to create a different outcome for the future. Yes? So, in general terms, the fourth level of integration is one of, I find, the most prolific stages of development because it doesn't matter what age you are. You can be my age, you can be 27 and be in the integration stage. You can be 72 and be in the integration stage, right? It doesn't matter. The fact of your life, how your journey has played out over time, what interactions you've had with others throughout your life over time, right? Those experiences that shape us are what determines the way that we show up, right? Now with integration, with this fourth stage, you can choose to say, I understand all of these things that limit me. I understand all of these mistakes from my past. I understand all of the ways in which I limit and self-sabotage myself. Excuse me. I'm not perfect, right? But to combat that awareness and realism, yes, but this can very easily turn into self-criticism and perfectionism if not, if you're not firm in those mental boundaries or in that ability to observe instead of absorbing, right? So in this integration stage and phases that you go into, right? Because you can go into integration and back into that third level. Because sometimes we're not ready to fully change. Sometimes we haven't gotten to the root of the issue or the circumstance and how that circumstance became an issue in the first place, right? You have to get to the root of it, right? And in life, the universe gives us the same lessons in different times, different scenarios, different people maybe, but they give us the same lesson until we learn it. So again, if you find yourself in the integration stage, maybe feel overwhelmed, maybe feel it's too difficult, maybe not ready to change, you may go back into that mindfulness. You may go back into that self-determination stage, that self-worth, right? You may have to go back and look into that again until you're able to grow into the person that you would like to become with the integration stage, right? And again, if you have that foundation of self-trust and stability, and then you have those skills and that research and that cognitive intelligence, right? That functioning that we all need just to make it through the day-to-day, really. But when you have that level of, it's okay if I make a mistake or have a bad day or don't want to do anything today, I can still continue the journey, my discipline, everything else, the habits that are helping me succeed, I can do that later or tomorrow, and I could try again. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, right? Then you get into that awareness of the consciousness that you're embodying. You can become aware at a higher level than those around you who are still stuck in the black and white thinking, the spiraling of the negative thoughts, right? And once you get past this integration level, right, you are able to just flow and just be. You are able to flow and allow things to happen. You are able to observe a situation without ever absorbing it. You are able to allow people to express themselves without feeling their feelings as well, without feeling overwhelmed by others without exchanging your energy, your life force, your vitality on others' issues and problems and depletion of their energy, right? Your aura becomes stronger, more open, higher vibrational, more light is able to integrate from that darkness, right? You have to connect fully with both aspects of yourself. We all have darkness within us. We all have light within us. But it is our choice to choose to grow and embody and be so that the light shines through, flows through us. Instead of allowing the darkness to consume us and blind us and mislead us. And there is false light. I will caution anyone watching this, anyone hearing this. There is false light. There is the mask that people put on. There is the show that they play out in their lives for others. And this is why having the foundation of trusting yourself, of taking care of yourself, of being aware of your own choices, and growing from your past and how it shaped you. That is where it's most important to understand that there are levels to these things, right? I just shared 5 different levels, but clearly there's more that I can go into depth on and more that I can speak on, but it's 32 minutes almost now, and I don't want to take too long from my studying, but this was a nice break for me. I just wanted to get this out. I was walking to the library and I was thinking, there are systems in place that say they help people, but there aren't systems in place that help people become more authentically themselves. There are different jobs, different fields, different committees, different councils, different clubs, different organizations, different. But there's no one solution that we can point to as a whole, as a collective, as humanity, that says, I became more authentic by doing this. I became more of who I was originally designed to be. I became that inner child that shines only light. There's nothing that we can point to in society, within a system, within any structure or power that we have access to that does that for us. Therefore, we need a new model of living. We need different lifestyles and systems in place that help us to become more authentic and more of who we were designed to be, instead of how the world and societies socialize us to be and structure things in particular strategic manners that mold us into specific people that become products the more that we mold ourselves. And the more of a product we are, the less of ourselves we become. And I'll leave that there. But please think on these words that I've shared. You don't have to agree, but just meditate on the things that I've said.